Hello, my name is Josh. We've been talking about motherboards for a while, and I want to show you that these concepts you're learning are not going to be out of date in 10 years. Now, I wish I could show you computers 10 years in the future, and I would love to see the chips and the components and the boards that are made, but how about we go the other way? Let's go 40 years in the past, and look at this. This is our Info 286. Let's get to it. So let's take a look inside. It's kind of hard to see a motherboard under any of this, so I'm going to take some of that off for you and we'll look at it. So I pulled this out of there. This is a terrifying array of chips. And quite frankly, at a glance, I don't know what this does. But it is pretty cool to see all these chips. They're actually removable. So if you got something to pry them out, you could replace them. And then there's some dip switches up here. Just a monstrosity of a card. I'm glad things have gotten smaller. I really am. First concept I want to get across is the chipset. And we see 4 chips right here. And this is that company called Chips and Technologies that I mentioned in the chipsets video. So they will handle all the communication between the CPU, any kind of RAM, and any kind of expansion slots. They are right in the middle of everything, just directing, and they are also attached to the BIOS. BIOS is the next thing I want to talk about. It is right here. These are Phoenix BIOSes, and they're right there. That's a BIOS. Yep. Another thing to mention about the BIOS here is that these chips are a lot bigger than what we have nowadays. If you've seen in my BIOS video, I had a chip that I held on my finger. These are they're a bit bigger. Get it? Bits and bytes. Okay. So I did mention that computers have buses. Every computer does, and in this one, we have some system buses, which is going to be the connection between this processor and our chipset. There's a bus to connect the BIOS to our chipset, and there is a bus that is connecting all of this RAM to the CPU or the chipset, wherever that goes. This is some system buses. Some expansion buses are our 8-bit and our 16-bit ISA cards. ISA stands for Industry Standard Architecture. It's not really standard nowadays, but back then this card, it ruled. It ruled for a good 15, 20 years. And if you had a hard drive controller, you would put it in here. If you had a graphics card, you would put it in here. And if you had a serial expansion card, it would go in here. This computer actually really only has one peripheral bus, and that's its keyboard connector back here. And we could say the floppy disk is a peripheral one as well, where it's accepting data from outside. But the keyboard one is really the only one that's baked into the board that's going to connect to another device. So on here we have some quartz crystals, as I've gone over before with our real-time clock video. And we know that these will vibrate at a certain frequency. It actually has it posted right on them. 12 megahertz, 14 megahertz, I'm guessing, 24 megahertz. And then over here, which I want to make a note, I found this in here, which was like 4 AA batteries creating a 6-volt power source. I think this was like a modified real-time clock battery for this. I'm just going to pull that out and not touch those. And then over here, we see a traditional clock quartz crystal right here. This and this are most likely going to be the chips that were used for the real-time clock. I'm not familiar with chips that are 40 years old, but it's the idea that there's a real-time clock and there's a chip that is keeping BIOS settings and counting up the time. I know I've talked to you guys about form factors, and this one actually was one of the very first form factors. and it is the XT form factor. So the first commercial one was called the PC form factor, and then the XT form factor was released shortly after to correct some changes. And that can be figured out by looking at where these ISA slots are and figuring out where the designated space for memory goes. And we can see some 8088 chips over here, just doing some basic input-output, and also by the location of the keyboard input. Form factors are what determine, where the ISA slots go, where that goes, where the CPU goes. It determines where stuff goes. And even back then, back in 1983, they had an idea of a form factor. Manufacturers would want to follow this if they wanted parts to be compatible with this. So a manufacturer of a computer would want to follow this if they wanted any kind of support for extra peripherals, if they wanted to be able to put anything into these ISA slots, which you kind of wanted to for your computer to do anything. If you just have a keyboard and a floppy disk, it's kind of hard to see what you're typing. It's kind of hard to print something. It's kind of hard to just do anything. These ISA slots are important, and having a standard of how far they are and how long they are. This one was extra long, but it has a support on the top of this. Like this case was designed for that extra long card. And that wasn't done by accident. Someone went out of their way to make sure that this system fits that XT specification. Now we don't see XT form factors anymore. And nowadays we have the ATX standard. The ATX standard is kind of like a revision of all these past form factors. There was XT, there was PC, there was baby AT, there's AT, and lots of form factors that we don't use. And you've probably never seen or will. Form factors. The last concept that I want to briefly touch on in this video is system on a chip. I'm really fond of it. It's the idea of having less chips in a system. It's the idea of having more functionality but having less stuff to do it. When I said back then it looks like chips just barfed over the board, I wasn't exaggerating. I've shown you this. This is horrifying. This is my first day seeing this, and it's going to give me nightmares. And I'm so glad we don't have that anymore. If I'm honest, I don't know what it does. And I don't have to know it because it's just gross and I don't really want to touch it. So this is the graphics card that came out of this. And, well, it's not really impressive. There's some chips on it. And it puts out a very low resolution output. This would probably be like 720, 480, 640, 480. Not HD and not cool, at least by today's standards. And yeah, there's a lot of chips on there too. Let me show you what we have today. Yeah, not really today, I lied. This is from about 10 years ago, but still way better. We have a good heat sink on there. We have, there's not chips everywhere. And it has support for 3 displays, 2 of them with HD capabilities. Like, wow. So for about the same amount of real estate, we get so much more performance with this card than we will ever get from this card or even a card from this generation. Really cool. I love to see how technology changes like this. I'm excited for the future too. I was told I needed to talk about the hard drive. It's a very big hard drive, very inefficient, and this would probably be like 8 megabytes. It has multiple platters and it's heavy. This is a heavy piece of machinery right here. And quite frankly, I'm kind of scared to hold it. Thanks you guys for watching and joining me on this series about motherboards and learning about them and learning about the concepts that go around them, such as standard specifications and the BIOS and how stuff works and is connected. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and follow me on this adventure as we learn about computers. Bye! What else do I say? Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, look for more videos, bye. So thanks for watching. What was I supposed to say? So thanks for watching. Are you recording? Heck. Drop a like, subscribe. videographer, editor, and wife says, wrap it up.
No, that's not what you're supposed to say. Come on, Josh.
Motherboard videos. No. Let's go. I want pizza.